Hey, welcome to Busted Pencils, Fully Leaded Education Talk. It's Dr. Johnny Lupinacci here this morning. No Tim. Tim's got a little dental emergency. We've all been there. You got to get your stones repaired sometimes. Sometimes your stones let you down. But hey, Jacob on the board with me this morning. We've got our homeroom. That's right. Every week starts fresh here at Busted Pencils, starts lively. Fully Leaded Education Talk. And man, that music today, I know we're kind of in that loop of, hey, we can't use copyrighted stuff. Womp, womp, womp. Hey, but we know better here at Busted Pencils. How many times have we taught our students, you got to make sure you cite on essays, and there are certain rules and regulations for how you can put other people's words to use. Well, the same kinds of things apply to music. So we're using original music for a little bit here at Busted Pencils where we get special clearances, or hey, little teaser, we make our own, because that's right, sometimes we shred here on Busted Pencils as well. Jacob, how are you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing good, Johnny. Again, like you said, I'm worried about this music thing, man. I mean,
Hey,
I'm looking forward to you writing your own original composition. I think that'll help things out a lot. But I've been delving through hours and hours of generic music trying to find something that fit the theme. So
that today's was pretty great. It's pretty on point. It's like something I would have had in the rock opera of my mind, that is Busted Pencils. Jacob just dropped it right here. He said, Johnny, what we really need you to do at Civic Media, in fact, producer Luke and all the good people at Civic Media got together with Jacob and they said, we really need you to get Johnny to write a rock opera for Busted Pencils. So, I'm thinking a two-part rock opera. Johnny goes to school, Johnny
that
goes
you
to
already got a
college.
title.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
going about it as like a full-on rock opera. I'm thinking very Quadrophenia inspired, right? And we build from there. But let's go with it. Jacob, I love the idea. Take us back to our roots, punk rock pedagogies, and the punk rock opera that is Busted Pencils. We're going to be working on that. So, listeners, keep bugging us. If we don't give you an update, keep bugging us. Say, Johnny, where's that rock opera at? Not just a rock opera, but in fact, a punk rock opera, fully leaded, education themed, Busted Pencils, the punk rock opera. Johnny goes to school,
You
right?
are the
Part
punk
one.
rock Mozart, so
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
that's the way to go. Oh man, so Jacob, we got some stuff. We were talking a lot last week. Loved last week's episodes. Got a lot of great feedback from listeners. People texting in, people calling in, leaving messages in the mailbag. Love that stuff. But wow, folks really like. First of all, Jacob, man, you got the titles down,
Thank
right?
you, thank you. I was a
I
little
like.
proud of myself on those.
Yes, there was some zingers. Listeners, if you haven't listened to last week's, especially class and session from last week, the hill to DEI on. I liked that. That was smooth, man.
You're the
So
punk rock Mozart. I like to think of myself as sort of a modern day poet of sorts. So
yes, the modern day poet of podcast titles. I love it.
yes.
But that was a great episode, and we talked about the chilling discourse of the executive orders, the anti diversity, equity, and inclusion movement, right? And we break it down. I often take things literally because I say, hey, words matter. They mean things. And we have to talk about what those words mean, both in context, but also just linguistically, what they carry forward. Because all words highlight something and background other things. So I take those things literally and I broke down a little bit of like, what is diversity? What is equity? What is inclusion? And why in the world would anybody see these as non-patriotic in terms of not part of a democracy, as they exist individually as core democratic values way before any so-called woke culture. And I say that with a lot of love because I think people would probably describe me as pretty woke. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think, again, literally, well, I'd hope so, because I woke up a few hours ago and I'd really like to think I'm not asleep at the wheel most of the time. You know what I mean, listener out there being asleep at the wheel. Hopefully you're not if you're driving and listening. But
Yeah,
that
not
time
our
when
listeners.
you're on autopilot, right? You're on autopilot, asleep at the wheel in the metaphorical sense of our everyday life. We're just kind of going about the motions. moving through the day. And so, I mean, most of us that have been called woke kind of lean into it because I'm like, well, thank you. And I hope you are too. I mean, like here we are going about our day. We should have eyes wide open to the things happening around us. So we got into DEI a little bit last week. And then Jacob, man, I love a good group thread text. I'm a text guy in my own. I'm not a big tech guy, but I've become a text guy. And I love the group chats, man. I love, my hockey guys texting me this weekend about Frozen 4. Some baseball friends that listen to Jacob and I talking about hurdles and home runs on Friday's drop last week. But I really want to make sure we can get into the weeds of our group text there because you sent us a little example of, hey, we are talking about DEI and the chilling effect of the executive orders, and boom, sent us an article. Jacob, take us into that this week.
Yeah, exactly. Because you and I and Tim were talking about DEI last week. And one of the things I thought that you said that was really interesting, you were talking about how there are some people in the country are just racist, sexist, or whatever. And I think that's true. But I think there's also sort of a middle group of people who kind of go either way and are a little squeamish on some things, but also can totally be convinced. I wonder what they're going to think about this article with that group of people. Because the other group, they're not really paying attention. And if they are, they like it. But for that middle group, I wonder what they think. I found this article on NPR. What did I say in class today? Teachers feel watched under Trump's anti-DEI push. It's talking about a teacher from Idaho who's dealing with the school administrators following Trump's executive orders on removing any trace of what he calls woke from classrooms. In this case, the particular issue was a sign she had in her classroom that said "Everyone is welcome" and featured a bunch of hands of different sizes and colors. The teacher, Sarah Inama, said, he told me, speaking about the school administrator, that political environments ebb and flow, and what might not have been controversial 3 or 6 or 9 months ago can be considered controversial now. Now, I know some people in that middle group we were just talking about said that lately they think things are going too far. It seems to me like on a lot of these Trump policies, he thinks things went too far in the 1960s.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example because, Jacob, one of the things we are always talking about is we're talking to teachers, and, Tim and I both former teachers, and I guess once you're a teacher, always a teacher, but we work directly with a lot of schools and teachers, and I teach teachers now. So all my elementary social studies teachers, we talked about this in class last week. I mean, we had it as a point of discussion. I mean, Idaho is my neighbor here in Washington, where I'm here teaching now. The future teachers of the Pacific Northwest region, or wherever they graduate and move to in our country, or even abroad. But the idea that we are in a moment, and the collective concern often coming from teachers to say, "Hey, I kind of understand where I'm at. Like we have our politics, but we're being accused of radically indoctrinating." Right, and that's sort of the language we can get more into, directly related to that executive order that came out in on January 29th this year, ending radical indoctrination in K-12 schools, right, which made the presupposition that, like, hey, teachers are out there radically indoctrinating young people, and by and large, that is not true. Might there be teachers who are doing bad teaching out there? Probably. There are probably a few here or there, but they are not the common place, nor should that be the goal to be radically indoctrinating or just indoctrinating in general. So the teachers were talking about it, Jacob, because I think you hit the nail on the head. This is an example of kind of the chilling effect, the everyday ways that, a teacher's like, hey, I have a sign that says everybody is welcome here in my classroom. Very common kind of bulletin board display, lots of different hands, like important message to send children, which we know from like developmental psychologists and learning theorists and all the experts that tell us how kids grow and learn. Say when they feel safe and welcome, they learn really well. When they learn better.
Who would have
Right. We
figured?
can just, yeah. That, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your basic needs are met somewhere, you're at you're most likely to be at your best. So, I think that middle you're talking about, Jacob, is a large representation of teachers. Not that they're not political, but every teacher, even some of the really left leaning and really right leaning great teachers out there that I know, they 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 approach their classroom as the middle ground, as a space that like doesn't really matter if you have right leaning politics or left leaning politics. When we're in this space, care about children and the best information we can apply to their well-being and to their growth as future citizens in our society. So when we come back to that, that's what I want us to like loop back around is that's the everyday way where I think we are at a moment where things are highly polarized and pulling us in those two directions, may it be like left and right and far left and far right. But the mass of us in the middle, especially teachers, it's like, how do we speak up and defend democracy in a sense that it's not radical activism to say everybody should feel welcome in my classroom? Because that's actually like it's kind of the same as telling a doctor like should everybody feel welcome in your hospital? I think we would all hope so. And I think most doctors will say like I take a Hippocratic oath to heal, to do no harm, to ask not judgment of who comes in and needs help with their health or whatever, but to treat them right with the best of their ability, applying the best knowledge that they have and everything like that. Was similar for a teacher. I think they really do a great job of committing to every kid deserves a really great teacher and a good education no matter where you are, who you are, what's going on, what people believe about you outside of the classroom. This should be at the very least a space in our community where you not only feel safe, but you feel welcome, you feel loved, and you feel like the person they're teaching is invested in you becoming a better future citizen of wherever. And many times that's our country. That's an act of patriotism to teach as an investment into strong democratic citizens. So yeah, I love that example, not because I'm glad to hear this happen in this great teacher's classroom, but it's common. And I don't want to point fingers and be like, well, what is that administrator doing? Because that's also a person who's caught in this really polarized moment.
Yeah.
So school principals saying like, "Hey, let's just realize like some people in our community might see this like 6, 9 months ago, it wasn't a big deal. Now it's sort of activated and we are on this little bit of a DEI witch hunt per se. And I just don't want it to come back at you, great teacher in my school, who I know is doing awesome work. Let's not let's not draw attention to ourselves, right? And be that example. I want to say, like, I think a friend of mine said, as much as she hates to say this, there is a danger in an over wokeness, right? And I thought about that for a little bit because I was like, that's a strange thing to hear from a really politically like wise and out left person, like left spectrum of the political scale. And I thought, like, well, is that a reaction to the moment? Is that kind of a concession, or is that? But I think it's also wise, and I understand that, like, as a school leader, the principal could very well be saying, like, "Hey, let's not make this a big deal," uh, and that's not any of us saying that it's that every child feeling welcome isn't a big deal. We should really prioritize that, but maybe they just wanted it to come down. I taught in a school that was very LGBTQ plus supportive, had amazing student groups, had I think really great student relationships in the school, great teacher support. Uh, but there was, a group of parents that were just rallying against the school for this support. And the administrators stood up for the school. The teachers all took I think, the right position is saying we're here for the development of all children, and this is the information we have about how our young people are developing. Like it or not, this is what we're doing in our school in terms of having space for everybody to, be in groups together, and that there's nothing absolutely harmful, and doing our work to educate the community. Uh, but in the end, there as part of it, while it was pretty hot, the school leadership asked us to take down, the rainbow flags and the trans flags from our classrooms and the stickers from the doors that were symbolizing that these are safe spaces for all students to be in. And that was a complicated and difficult decision as a teacher because it's like, hey, I don't think I should be taking this down, but I also don't necessarily think the fight to keep it up is the best use of our energy if we can ensure that these spaces stay safe, do some educating. We now know where our community sits outside of our school. So let's do more work to sort of lose the battle, hopefully win the war kind of thing. And that's a bad metaphor too, because I'm going to say like the last thing we should be doing is having our classrooms be a battleground, right? Which right now it is. And this article, Jacob, you shared this weekend and you read a little bit to our listeners today is a prime example of great teacher has a billboard, very simple billboard.
Yeah.
It's got little hands because it's an elementary classroom, all on the billboard, all different sizes, all different colors and skin tones and shades, and all the great representation says, all are welcome here. Well, hey, that's essentially the core goal of every classroom in a democracy. All are welcome here, right? What does that mean? What does it mean to be part of a classroom space, right? How can we learn together? So, uh, the fact that that gets taken down or being forced to be taken down, excuse me, is an example of everyday ways. Something simple again, like there could have been a principal and a teacher said, "Hey, this has got to come down right now because the political climate is just too hot." Well, now what? Like, see, that's example of the classroom being a battleground for political battle, and the misnomer here, the claim that I really want us in spaces like busted pencils or in conversations, listeners, you have with educators and neighbors is the false claim is that teachers are out there teaching young people to be against America, to be what they would say is anti-patriotic or anti-American. And this could not be something further from the truth in terms of what it means to be patriotic in the true sense, to be dedicated and devoted to a democracy. Means also to apply one's best understanding, not only of history, but of scientific literacy and of the skills we often would come together as experts in the learning community and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if people were math literate in this context, if they could read and write in these kinds of ways or at these levels and have discourse, communicate with one another, have historical understanding, not only of our country, but of the world, have scientific literacy, understanding of scientific concepts that help us as a community be a stronger democracy. Remember, a strong democracy isn't everybody believes the same things, has the same beliefs. It holds value in diversity, a diversity of ideas, a diversity of ways of understanding the world, but also has a principle called common good, that we work through our differences in the best interest of the common good of our community and country. So to teach history, right? To teach that, hey, we've made decisions that weren't always the best of decisions. That's both Republican, that's both Democrat. That doesn't belong to any particular group, right? That when we learn about our histories in particular, we learn about scientific inquiry and all of these different concepts that are part of the battleground, political battleground of education right now. And I say that a little tongue in cheek because shouldn't it just be obvious? We learn these things to be stronger citizens, to be participating in the economy, right? To be contributing to our great country and to its continued growth and greatness. So it's a little bit of a language play. Remember, I'm the words guy when it comes to this. And sometimes that takes us into the weeds here at Busted Pencils. But to have a whole administration whose campaign is to make America great again is based on the false premise that it wasn't growing towards greatness already. So it kind of starts off tricking people with the words because it's saying like it was great, it stopped being great, and we need to be great again. And that's a little bit of the way words kind of move you into a particular area where you can't make other moves as easier as if you could, keeping things wide open. So it already pulls us in a direction. And then we start to say things like schools are radically indoctrinating children to be anti American. that couldn't be further from the truth in mass. And we're going to keep talking about it here at Busted Pencils, because I know sometimes I make it more complicated than it needs to be. But on this day, Jacob, thanks for sharing that great article from our teacher friend, our sister over in Idaho, who was simply saying all children are welcome in her classroom. Good for her. Good for every teacher out there that's continuing to do the good work. And remember, unfortunately, sometimes you gotta lose the battle to win the war. The war being a stronger democracy, a continued America that learns from its mistakes and continues to build on those core democratic values. And now for your moment of Zen. Objectivity is not desirable because if we want to have an effect on the world, we need to emphasize those things which will make students more active citizens and more moral people. Hey, thanks for listening to Busted Pencil's Homeroom podcast today. Remember to grab great podcasts filled with more Busted Pencils content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, the Civic Media website, where you can visit us at bustedpencils.com. Hey, and don't miss this week's class in session on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about hurdles and home runs on Friday. And of course, catch Busted Pencils every Saturday at 3 p.m. Central Time across all the Civic Media network stations for an hour of your favorite blue-collar scholars, Tim and Johnny, and keep busting pencils.